Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. So let's talk about deprogramming. And no, I am not talking about cults. I am talking about narcissistic relationships, but they are kind of the same thing. So let's talk about deprogramming and how it relates to your healing from these relationships. And before I get into that, if you are interested in healing and you want to do that deeper dive into healing from your narcissistic relationships, because this video is about healing, check out the link in the video description to pre-order my new book, It's Not You, coming out in February, or sign up for my monthly healing program, also in the video description. Please pre-order my book because it's not you, and you will learn so much. Thank you. So let's talk about deprogramming. This term, deprogramming, has been used to refer to the process that people who are leaving cultic systems, or cults as they're popularly known, will go through, right? I don't know that it's an official or technical term, but I view deprogramming as a process of cleansing and reintegration. It might involve therapy. It might involve working with someone who's an expert at helping people break out of these systems and psychologically how they hold people hostage. A cult is just an organized narcissistic relationship, right? Instead of one person in a relationship with one narcissist, it is lots of people who are in this narcissistic relationship. And all cult leaders, let's face it, are narcissistic or psychopathic. The most common vibe is sort of a dark triad person meets communal narcissism. The person in the cult is love-bombed, indoctrinated, loses their identity, they're chronically gaslighted. The cult leader or the cult system plays on the person's values and ideology, such as their hope for a better world or a more equitable system. Then the cult and the cult leader strip the person's identity away systematically in more extreme ways than obviously we would see in a traditional one-on-one narcissistic relationship. Now, this may be seen in a variety of ways. It depends on the cultic system. For example, in some cults, people are asked to change their names or they're given new names. There'll be requirements in how people are supposed to dress or all dress similarly, changes in hairstyle, changes in overall appearance. These will be hierarchical systems whereby people earn regard in the system by working up ranks or levels, which often have names or signifiers or codes or even colors, and which often require more money to climb up these various levels. There's usually a recruitment arm that makes cultic systems look like pyramid schemes. There is a sense of belonging and specialness, that what is being shared in the group is a level of understanding and awareness that people outside the system do not have. As time goes on, you'll see more and more isolation in a cultic system. And people don't notice it because you're surrounded by other people of the cultic community. So people in these groups may not feel alone per se, but systematically ties are cut between the person in the cult and their family, their friends, and even their jobs. It's not unusual for cultic systems to demand that a person geographically move to show their commitment, right? It's implied that you're more committed to the whole system if you do. And maybe living in what may be branded as cooperative and interdependent systems with shared duties and roles, but which ultimately and solely survive the cult leader. In cults, people are often broken down by intense work demands and schedules. It may be sitting in some dumbass seminar for 14 hours, listening to the cult leader go off in some word salad riff until 3 in the morning, and then the cult members still have to wake up at 5 a.m. while the cult leader sleeps in, of course. People in cults may simply be denied sleep, be asked to engage in exhausting physical or athletic activities like intense yoga or team sports. The sleep deprivation is a classical element of cult control because it further distances a person from themselves and renders them more vulnerable to the cult leader's BS. For no other reason than the person in the cult is trying to survive, so you kind of give in to what that system is. The goalposts are constantly moved in a cultic system. So a person is always off balance, trying to earn their place and trying to earn the regard of the leader. And by doing that, by recruiting more new members, earning more money, spending more money, working more hours, and showing their devotion to the cult and the cult leader through time, money, dedication, and giving up more and more of themselves in the futile attempt to win over the cult leader, for whom there's really no end game but your absolute servitude. And tell me that this doesn't sound like a narcissistic relationship. And then, after the person in the cult has shown that they're not walking away from this indoctrination process, especially not early on, largely because of all of this, what I'd call identity theft and cultivated self-doubt and sheer exhaustion, well, that's when the cult starts in with the coercion really hard, right? And people then are imprisoned by fear because there's nowhere or no one to turn to. They've given up money, they have no more social support, they've given up careers, and they may actually still believe in the ideology of the group and care for some of the people within the group. Simply put, people in cults are scared, confused, and isolated after enough time passes. If a person leaves a cult, what happens will look like post-separation abuse in any abusive relationship, with the remaining cult members who are still fully indoctrinated will harass and stalk. There'll be flying monkeys, smear campaigns, being surveillance. And since most cults collect what is known as collateral, which is information or imagery that could be shaming or damaging, and this could be forced confessions, secrets, confidential information, or sexual imagery, many people get pulled back in or can't easily step away without fear of terrible ramification for themselves or others. The cult leaders themselves are almost always charismatic, charming, convincing, confident, grandiose, manipulative, superficially intelligent. What they tend to do is they crack open one sort of out-of-date introductory psychology textbook, and then they use that to sell ideas that simultaneously play on self-doubt and hope and never having taken intro psych. They are also gaslighters, exploiters, and predators. This is every cult leader, with a few tweaks here and there. They are usually men, but there have in fact been some female cult leaders over history, and certainly women who've backed up the cult leaders strong. There are sometimes even couples who will lead a cult. There's typically sexual coercion and exploitation. It's simply another means of the cult leader gaining control. So you can imagine if someone gets into a system like that, not only is it deeply traumatic, but everything we know about healing from narcissistic abuse applies. But this clear deprogramming step that happens as people heal, breaking people out of these fears. For example, their fear that if they do or say X or Y, that something bad would happen, or that they were sort of defying what they were taught. Sometimes deprogramming is about breaking people out of their own grandiose and entitled beliefs, that they and the cult members were chosen, and everyone on the outside is somehow wrong, or may have left with some really twisted beliefs about work and work ethics. People who leave cults will have a mistrust of the world that needs to be worked through. And a person slowly but surely will have to return to their genuine sense of self. And this can take a long time. And the people who are expert in this kind of deprogramming approach this systematically and very carefully. So that's all a cult, right? And as I said, I guess there's a few structural differences between a cult and a narcissistic relationship. But really, all narcissistic relationships are just mini cults with a membership of one and one leader. And sometimes more, I would argue at some level that all narcissistic family systems are small cults themselves. And remember, there is no such thing as a good cult. They are bad by definition. So all of that said, what would deprogramming look like for a survivor of any form of narcissistic abuse? We deprogram cult survivors. Could that apply here? Now, what I'm going to share are not steps per se. They're all a part of a larger process of deprogramming from such an invalidating manipulative relationship. You could be doing and probably should be doing all of these things simultaneously. The first thing that has to happen is breaking out of the belief system of the narcissistic person. For years in these relationships, sometimes a lifetime, you're told you're not good enough, you're too demanding, you're selfish, you're stupid, you're unattractive, you're a liar, you're lazy, you're not committed. Fill it in, okay? What untruths were you shared about yourself by the narcissist? And the narcissistic people also often hold some distorted beliefs about the world. The world is so unfair to me. Only to them, by the way, not to you. Everyone is out to get them, just them. So this first step, or first piece of this, is to learn that you were sold a bad bill of goods in this relationship. It was all nonsense. Basically, you were told they are right, you are wrong. Or even if they didn't say those things out loud, their neglect and withdrawal and abandonment could be experienced chronically by you as you not being good enough, because if you were, they would have stuck around. A second piece of this whole sort of deprogramming pie is that you got to de-isolate yourself. Social support is absolutely essential to healing. You need empathy, compassion, people who see you accurately. Now, for a cult survivor, that may mean that they have to make amends and slowly reach out to family or old friends that they left behind, or they may join forces with other cult members who left, who get what they went through. It may involve getting into therapy or support groups. But ultimately, all of this is about choosing healthy, empathic, agreeable, kind, and respectful people to spend time with. People who do not gaslight or manipulate. A third part of this structure of deprogramming from one of these relationships is to honor your body and nervous system. The wounds you have from these relationships are not just held as thoughts, they're held somatically deep in your body. And so even as things start making sense, as you come out of the fog of a narcissistic relationship, you still don't feel like yourself. This may be fatigue, physical discomfort, headaches, but also this sort of sense of being on edge, of not feeling in your body, of feeling physically uncomfortable, especially in certain circumstances. These unexpressed wounds of emotional abuse get held there because we often could not fight back in these relationships. Many people will talk about nightmares and dissociated moments years down the road after these relationships. They got under your skin, literally, and that means connecting to your body, whether that is somatically informed trauma therapy, breathing, grounding, physical exercise, feeling your body and listening to it, and responding to it. A fourth piece then of this whole deprogramming experience is solely to take yourself back. If you came into a narcissistic relationship when you were very young, or from birth, it was your parents, or maybe a relationship you've had since adolescence or early adulthood, you may not have even gotten a chance to explore or fully develop you. Narcissistic relationships are like noisy scaffolds that surround us and drown out our own voice and leave us believing that they are the only reason that we are standing. The fact is, they are the reason you never got to stand fully tall. So this is everything. Means exploring your interests, exploring hobbies, going back to school, traveling, meeting new kinds of people, trying new foods, opening up to different perspectives, then sitting with the bigger questions of who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? And just be with that and explore it. If people don't deprogram from these relationships, they cannot heal. You need to take back your sovereignty so you aren't vulnerable to another cultic system or narcissistic relationship. I have talked with more than a few cult survivors who've gotten pulled into another cultic system, something resembling one, or even a narcissistic relationship. This is why I tell folks, take that year off after a narcissistic relationship so you can do this deprogramming. Deprogramming from a narcissistic family system can take a long time, and it can be similar to a long-term narcissistic marriage or even an employment system like a long-term job with a tyrannical boss or leader. Whoever the narcissistic person is, their beliefs can get into your emotional DNA, and unspooling that takes a minute. Give yourself a gentle period of re-entry into a world where you have more empathic people around you. And as healing begins, you will then start entering into phases of radical acceptance, discernment, disengagement, and above all, permission to be you, fully you. If you have ever walked around in a fog after a narcissistic relationship, almost like there was gauze over your face, and you felt a little cut off from the world, and you think, oh my goodness, it's not like I was in a cult or something. You kind of were. So embrace the process of deprogramming anyone has to go through after a period of indoctrination, and view that as the pathway into the process of committing to healing, a process that you have to dive into every day of your life. Good luck and thanks.